From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. If you have any questions you'd like to ask or advice you'd like to give, come on over to podtherapy.net and join the conversation. Today on the show, we talk about sex and how you're probably doing it wrong. And now, broadcasting from Level 9 Studios, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
This is great, because I've been meaning to ask you about this. It was time that we had the birds and the bees talk. I have a lot of questions.
I just want to know why it was birds and bees. Why did that?
That's not what. Did your parents have a birds and bees talk with you?
No, I still don't understand.
That's why we have this podcast.
I've been winging this for over 30 years.
Yeah, so neither of us has this. All right, we're going to need stick figures, and we're going to need somebody that we should have asked our last guest, the sex offender therapist, Whitney. She probably could have explained some things.
Yeah, probably. Damn.
Yeah, that would have worked out. But we actually do have a sex topic to lead with. We have breaking research, Nick, and anytime we have breaking research from the field of psychology, we like to share it with our listeners so that they can walk away with something educational instead of all the nonsense that we usually give them. So I thought I would share it. According to the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, a new study focused on heterosexual long-term couples tried to discover how effective couples were at catching sexual interest cues. So this study was on whenever a man flirts with his spouse or his mate, or when a woman flirts with her spouse or her mate in heterosexual relationships, do they accurately catch each other's signals? Do they think they're flirting when they're not, or did they miss it? How did that break down? So the researchers asked men and women to identify when they believed they were being flirted with, and then the researchers checked with the partner to see if the flirting had actually happened. Here were the results. Women mistakenly believed that men were flirting much more than they actually were. And it's interesting. So women misinterpreted it, and they went on the high side. They thought, oh yeah, he's definitely signaling, he's definitely flirting. But whenever the researchers asked the guys, and they were like, hey, are you flirting? The guy's like, no. I was literally just sharing my drink with her. No, I opened up the car door so I could get my Jack in the Box bag out of there and throw it away. I wasn't being polite. Did you pull out the chair for her? Yeah, but that's because I wanted her to sit down already so we could eat. You opened the door for her? Yeah, to usher her out so we could get to the car and get to the restaurant.
So this is the first time I'm looking at this actually right now.
Yeah.
So I had not prepared
New
for
data.
any of this.
Fresh off the press.
So this study was done, they were studying couples.
Yes, long-term couples.
Okay.
And they were trying to understand, whenever you're sexually interested in your mate and you signal that, does the other person catch it? And or do they misunderstand it? And so, interestingly, if you asked just general single men and women, women would probably say, yeah, men think we're flirting with them a lot more than we really are. Guys take everything as sexual. She says, oh, are you going to finish that, coffee, or do you want to go get a coffee? And he's like, yeah, I know what you mean by that. You want to shack up later. And, so like that's what you'd think would happen. But in this study, it was the exact opposite. Women mistakenly believed that men were flirting with them much more than the men actually were. The men were not signaling interest, and women thought they were. And on the other hand, the study showed that men mistakenly believed that women were flirting much less than they actually were. So they'd ask the women, are you flirting? And they'd say, yes. And they'd ask the guys, was she flirting? And they'd go, no, I didn't catch anything, which is weird because single guys, they think everything is flirting. And they're like, oh yeah, I asked her if she wanted to grab a bite and she said yes. So we're totally going to get it on. And like the girls are like, whoa. Like I was being polite. Like I'm talking to you. I'm just a nice person. But in this study, it was the exact opposite. Isn't that fascinating?
Actually, okay, for me personally.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Okay. It's disturbing.
No, it's not. It's like this confirms what I already believe.
Okay.
Like as a single guy,
right.
I'm oblivious
right
to most any kind of sexual advance or flirting or anything like that.
Okay.
I don't pick up on it at all.
You don't notice
I'm completely oblivious. And as a matter of fact, I think a lot of the people that I know, a lot of the guys that I know, seem to be more on the oblivious side than they are astute and perceptive.
2 notes on that. First,
Okay.
are you recently single? Yeah.
Well, 3 years ago.
Okay, got it.
I mean, as far as
in a relationship.
Currently in a relationship.
Got
yes.
it. So you're
Okay,
referring
yes.
in past tense, and I do that for Laura's sake. You're welcome, Laura. So he announced himself as a single guy, and Laura was cringing listening to that. But for her, I will make sure that we clarify. And then the second thing, though, on that point is you're saying, when I was single, when I was dating, I was pretty oblivious when women were actually being pretty flirtatious with me. I didn't catch it. I think you're the exception, not the rule. I think that, but the question wasn't asking necessarily, are you picking up on it? It was asking, how often are you thinking it's happening? And guys, would actually misinterpret, they'd miss the signals. And so that's a good point. But they're in long-term relationships. Women would miss the signals and imagine that they happened when they didn't happen.
Right.
And that's very weird. And so
that is kind of weird.
The question I think that comes out of this research that maybe you and I can circle into is, whenever you have a long-term relationship, here the study is showing that whether you're a woman and you're mistakenly thinking there's signals when there aren't any, or whether you're a guy and you're not seeing signals that are coming at you, clearly these two ships are passing in the night. These are two people that are in a relationship. They'd like to spend time together, and they're missing the signals toward each other. What advice can we kind of offer to folks that are in those long-term relationships to better and more accurately signal their interest or catch that signal so that way there's no ambiguity? Because in a relationship, you think you can be honest enough to walk up and go, hey, would you like to have sex tonight?
Right.
But there's no charm to that. That's not very romantic.
Yeah, that sounds more like a business transaction.
It is more like a business transaction. Yeah. So that's interesting for a lot of couples. How do they subtly get through that? I know a lot of couples have signals, especially if they have kids. Like they might. I knew this one couple that would say, "Hey, do you want to bake brownies tonight?" Like that was their signal, was like they're gonna have brownies. Or a lot of couples will say,
yeah,
hey,
but then
you
the poor
have a drink tonight?
kids, those poor kids are like,
having brownies?
where are the brownies?
Oh yeah, there was this whole thing about kids who walk in on their parents and they're oblivious to what's going on, and they're talking to each other at school or whatever, and they're like, yeah, I think I caught my mommy and daddy wrestling the other day, and this other kid's like, yeah, I did that the other day. Every time that happens to me, I get a bowl full of ice cream and I get to watch my favorite movie, just to put them out there for a little while. But Nick, long-term couples, how can they better communicate their interest in one another so that these signals don't get missed?
Right. Yeah, I think that is a good point, because this actually fits with some of the letters that we get written into the show.
Right.
As far as people writing in who have been in long-term relationships that they kind of report the same thing as far as like the spark is gone and things like that. And so looking at this research, this kind of makes me wonder.
Yeah.
Is the spark gone, or are we just becoming oblivious to certain cues?
Isn't that interesting? Because you'd assume that they know each other better. And so I know your signals better. But this research is saying, no, you don't. You're mistaking it a lot. Yeah. And that's fascinating. So we have to find a way to accurately and directly communicate interest without it losing its flirtiness and becoming too businesslike and too routine and too obvious. So, I mean, I'd be interested in what you say. I mean, there was a book on this that offered couples kind of a strategy, and it was called the bead system. And it was an interesting idea. Basically, you would put a cup, there was a little dish that you'd put on the nightstand of both mates. And then they would have these little, just decorated beads you get from a fabric store. And essentially, if you wanted to signal to your mate that you'd like their physical attention, you would go put a bead in their dish, and they would see it at some point. And when the bead was in there, they had 72 hours to sort of acknowledge it and do something about it. And if they were going to do something about it, they will. And if not, they'll take the bead out and they'll put it away. And so that was kind of a nonverbal signal, because you'd walk past and go, oh, the bead's gone. So that was a clear signal that they're not interested or whatever. But that was a kind of a nonverbal way to signal interest and that you'd like some attention. I know a lot of couples that actually tried that. There's a whole book about it. Yeah.
Okay.
That way it's a direct signal without having to say it, because you lose a lot of the magic when you come right out and say it, or it sounds passive aggressive. I know a lot of couples that will say it in a passive tone, but it comes off as unattractive because you're like, oh, sure has been a while since we got together, and they're like, okay, are you accusing, what are you trying to say? That's not how you charm me into this, or I think couples can find themselves struggling to communicate that. Right. But I don't know, tips or tricks, anything that you've picked up?
I guess I think for me, it's easier to work with the person that can't seem to get the message across. Like if that seems like an easier target than the one that overinterprets or believes that flirting has happened more often. Right. That seems like that's a harder thing to deal with. The one that feels that it's happening less often, that's easy, because at that point you can work with that one partner and say, okay, your partner is not picking up on these cues.
Right.
Figure out what and kind of going back to the love languages, that book, like figure out what his language is, figure out the things that this person is responding to,
right, and
do more of those things.
Yes.
Kind of do the things that send a clear message to him that he can pick up on very clearly.
Good advice. Yeah. That's really good advice. Yeah, especially the concept of it being a language. Like, your goal is to send a message, right? And that message is sexual interest. I'm interested in you sexually. I hope that something is going to happen. But if you're sending that message and they're not picking up on it, that's an ineffective communication.
Yeah, it's all about how you communicate the message. Because, what I think is flirty,
right,
to the other person may not be at all.
May not be,
and then
they don't think about it at all.
But that's the thing, is like the person has to understand that it's not that they are not interested, it's that they're not picking up. It doesn't have that meaning.
But see, Nick, this is something that happens in a lot of relationships, is person A sends flirty signal to person B. Person B doesn't even catch flirty signal and is therefore neutral or oblivious to it or continues on their day. Mm-hmm. Now person A is very sensitive because they feel rejected. And that causes a problem where usually now person A becomes passive-aggressive or is like, well, I'm going to show you, or pushes back on them because they feel rejected and it hurts. And now person B is like, whoa, I am definitely getting a clear signal that we're fighting now, but they didn't catch the first one. They don't know where it came from. And both of them expect the other one to sort of like read their mind and know what they meant to say. And it's like this huge exercise in redundancy that we're just bad at communication.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, the more difficult part is then what advice do you have for the person that is perceiving flirting happening more often than it really is?
Yeah, they're not picking up on the signal. Yeah.
No, the one that is picking up on it when it's not there.
When it's not there.
That one seems like that's a lot more difficult to deal with, because it's the other person isn't necessarily sending that message, sending that signal,
but they think it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't necessarily see any of this as a problem, except that I want a message to be interpreted accurately. I think accuracy should be a goal, right? And so, like, if I'm constantly sending you messages that I'm anything at you, angry at you, happy with you, indifferent to you, I hope that I'm sending those accurately and that you're catching them accurately, because otherwise we're going to go in two different directions and the relationship always feels out of sync. So I guess, and it sounds like such an MFT thing to say, a marriage and family therapist thing, is increase communication. Like, I definitely want that, but people don't like that because they feel like it's too candid, it's too honest, and it's too raw. And, like, I don't know. Like, in my relationship, I came up with playful ways to check. But, like, I have a verification system now. Been married for 12 years. So if I think I got a signal, I ask. Are you signaling me?
I really want to hear more about
this. I'm able
to
do this playfully, Nick. Hold on. But here's where it's funny. I'm the guy that jokingly now believes that everything she's doing is flirting. So she'll be like, hey, do you want me to get you a cup of coffee? And I'll, like, go like, yeah, I know what that means. She's like, no, hold on. Literally, I want to sip the coffee with you. I just don't want to make my own cup. So I was thinking maybe we could split it. And I'm like, I know what you're really trying to say. Just like, okay, no, but for real. Like, nothing's going to happen. And I'm like, all right, you be coy. It's like, you play hard to get. I know you don't want to come off too strong. But it's funny because now we've got a mutual joke that I am delusional and think everything is coming at me. And so now we've got it to where, there's open communication in a funny way. Right. But I think that's hard to achieve for a lot of couples. So I don't know. Go with the bead thing. It's a nonverbal way to, like, signal interest. You don't have to rely on your ability to flirt or using tone of voice or a winky face text message. Like, who can ever get all that crap right? There's no way to know.
Yeah. And not that I'm going to be closed-minded, but that just seems weird to me.
Yeah, it's a little direct. No, but I mean, it's passive though. It's a clear communication. It's a binary system of yes or no. Is there a bead in the dish? Yes or